Okay, so welcome back, everyone. I trust you had a restful night and are ready and raring to go, have your coffee cup filled and ready to make some decisions this morning. And I think we'll just get started with our worship with Reverend Doug Peck.
Hey everyone, welcome to our next worship service at our fall meeting.
Don, we're not
remember that
seeing
the
the
theme
video right.
of the service is to reconnect, and today that means for me to
Give us a minute, folks, as we get our text sorted. There we go.
Hey everyone, welcome to our next worship service at our fall meeting. Remember that the theme of the service is to reconnect, and today that means for me to remember. I want us to think about the things we need to remember. And I'm here at Chemo Key with Jill and also with Trista, and they're going to tell you something that you should remember.
Yeah, you should remember that we're here at camp to have fun and that you can always come and use this space.
And we're also here to remind you that we have this beautiful space in nature that has been provided to us, and we should be grateful for creation, and we want you to come out here and share it with us at Camp Chemo Key.
As they came near the village to which they were going, he walked ahead as if he were going on, but they urged him strongly, saying, "Stay with us, because it is almost evening, and the day is now nearly over." So he went in to stay with them. When he was at the table with them, he took bread, blessed it, and broke it, and gave it to them. Their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. They said to each other, "Are not our hearts burning within us while he was talking to us on the road, while he was opening the scriptures to us?"
I heard this great sermon once. It was done by a friend of mine, Father Peter Amjay. He is over at King's Parish at King's College here in London, Ontario. And he had just come back from a 40-day silent retreat. And I was so excited to hear his sermon on his first Sunday back from that retreat. People on retreat there are led with an acronym in mind, RIM. And they're asked to think about R, relationship, I, identity, and M, mission. Now, mission, I think, is what we're always thinking about as people of faith. We're always thinking to ourselves, what does God want me to do? What am I supposed to do? And And people on retreat are told to just slow down from thinking about what the do is, because they're there to not do. They're there to just be. And I have to admit, it's the worrying about mission that sometimes causes me anxiety. So this idea about focusing on other things, identity, relationship. To me, we were getting into identity yesterday when we were talking about who we are as a people of faith. We are members of Christ's body. And this idea of relationship, well, it kind of comes easy to us when we just think about being out here in a place like Chemo Key. It's so easy to feel in relationship, feel connected. Thinking about that idea of reconnecting makes me want to think about remembering our relationship. It almost sounds funny, but I believe that sometimes we forget about that when we're so focused on production and the doing. Remember. You heard Jill and Trista say it. Remember that you have us as a resource at camps like Chemo Key, Pierce Williams, and other places. Also remember what it was that made us want to start this relationship in the first place. What was it about church? What was it about learning about God? For me, the exciting thing about it was that it provided answers that nowhere else was giving me. And it provided it in a way that was so satisfying for my soul. A peace that surpasses understanding. In the wildest way, it all made sense. The people walking with this mysterious man, they use that word, remember. Remember how our hearts were on fire. That's what I think we're doing when we're nurturing that relationship. We're remembering how our hearts are on fire. That when we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise as when we first begun. Remember the first and the beginning. When that relationship starts like it did for Moses, there was this wild event where a bush was on fire. For Isaiah, there was this moment where there was this coal on fire and it touches him, but it doesn't burn him. It just fuels him. That's what the relationship is meant to do. Fuel us. When it comes time to think about mission, we won't even have to wonder or think. But today is a day for relationship. And I know you all know how to do it. But if you're having trouble, look to the other members of the body. Look to people like Jill and Trista, wanting us to remember that they can help us with the relationship part. Amen.
As I
So go down to the river to pray, go from the river and be a people. Be a people in relationship with one another, and be a people in relationship with a God who will very soon call us, very soon, to love and serve. Amen.
Thank you so much, Doug, and say thank you, please, to our junior minister there for her wonderful job, and I still can't believe that she's only 7 years old. That's amazing. Thank you so much for your worship, and we look forward to your leading worship this afternoon at our celebration of ministry. Speaking of celebrations of ministry, I think it's time to have introduction to our candidates. And so we will turn things over to Tanya Cameron. Yes, there's a video.
It is my great pleasure to introduce Roxanne Bale, candidate for designated lay ministry. Roxanne and I first met over coffee and the most delicious pear tart I have ever had in a small cafe in London in 2019. Roxanne confessed that she had been exploring the idea of ministry formation for a very long time and was consulting widely with others. Yet she remained nervous at what it might mean to say yes to this call. She was not without serious skills already. She had been attending her local church for several years and had served in many different capacities, including most recently the head of session. She was also an active licensed lay worship leader in the former Middlesex Presbytery. Despite her nervousness, Roxanne engaged with Candidacy Pathway. As part of her application process for an assessment of promise, her mentor advised the Candidacy Board that Roxanne has a living faith that has been honed by moments of deep suffering as well as moments of profound joy. She is very real and down to earth. She's non-judgmental and she lives out of a profound awareness that God is love. It may seem as though I'm overstating her competencies, but I truly know very few people who possess as many gifts for ministry as Roxanne does. Roxanne herself wrote, "Many have seen gifts in me that I was not always willing to see in myself. There have even been previous periods when I have entered into discernment to explore my call to ministry. These were led by promptings from clergy, parishioners, friends, and family over the years, but the timing had not warranted a commitment. Yet the Spirit has continued to nudge, and ever faithful God would not let me go." The Candidacy Board was witness to this lived experience of both of these statements, and having met with Roxanne, found she certainly had promise for ministry. She was further approved as a candidate for designated lay ministry. During this interview, the board asked Roxanne about beginning supervised ministry education as serving in a pastoral charge. She shared that she had been spending no small amount of time thinking about SME sites and how that process would unfold, and said, "It's a little bit scary, probably the most scary part of the process, but it's a good scary." Scary or not, Roxanne thrived in her SME experience at London Road West Pastoral Charge in Sarnia, Ontario. The lay supervision team were diligent and thoughtful in their evaluations of Roxanne's formation, and in their most recent feedback shared that "we would like the Candidacy Board to know that we feel Pastor Roxanne is the perfect fit for us here at London Road West. Roxanne is a conscientious, compassionate, caring, and talented preacher." Her educational supervisor, Reverend Catherine Young, identified that Roxanne is a dedicated, hardworking student and minister. She's thoughtful, grounded, spiritual, and life-affirming. She will continue to be an amazing minister and a huge asset to any pastoral charge she serves in the United Church of Canada. Reverend Young further shared it was an honor and a pleasure to be the educational supervisor of this exceptional student as she pursued her designation. Being Roxanne's educational supervisor has greatly enhanced my ministry, depth of theology, and understanding of my spiritual vocation and formation. Thank you for this privilege as being her educational supervisor. Southwestern Ontario Candidacy Board experienced similar facets of Roxanne formation and affirmed that she is grounded in her strong faith and lives it daily. She has grown in her understanding of ministry and her identity as a designated lay minister. She is self-aware, open and candid, intuitive, and she has passions and the life skills to put them into action. On behalf of the United Church of Canada, the Southwestern Ontario Candidacy Board expresses our gratitude to London Road West Community of Faith for discerning to become an SME site, and those members that answered the call to serve in a Community of Faith connection team. We extend thanks to Reverend Kate Young for her role as educational supervisor to Roxanne. We are all the richer for this overall experience. Congratulations, Roxanne, and we look forward to celebrating with you later today.
The other day on my walk, I was meditating on the word reconnect. While soaking up the beauty of God's creation, the Holy One met me exactly where I was and drew my attention to a wild grapevine on the nearby fence. In John 15:5, Jesus says, "I am the vine, and you are the branches. If you remain in me, and I in you, you will bear much fruit." This reminded me of the importance of staying connected to Christ through all the times of our lives and our need to sometimes spiritually reconnect. Like this vine, our spiritual lives thrive when they're connected and intertwined with Christ, the embodiment of God's love and peace and justice in the world. When we stay connected to the life source, we flourish. But in our lives, it's full of distractions and busyness. And I know all too well how easy it is to drift and feel disconnected, both from Christ and ourselves. This is our human experience. This ongoing journey of disconnection and reconnection is not foreign to me. For many years, I found myself, like Jonah, running from God's persistent call, feeling disconnected from my true self and even denying who God had called me to be. Yet in those times of disconnect, God always remained faithful and patiently waited for me to reconnect. You may have experienced a similar situation. But being connected to the vine, to Christ, and all that God has in store for us is where our lives bear the fruit. The theme of reconnect is particularly meaningful to me as I reflect on my lifelong journey in the United Church and await recognition as a designated lay minister. My faith today is much deeper and richer than when I first responded to God's call. Through my studies over these last 3 years, ongoing theological reflection, learning to listen and to heed the Spirit's voice, and practical ministry experience, I have reconnected to my faith in new ways, and through God's grace, transformation has occurred. And let's face it, God is in the transformation business. I've expanded my worldview, and I've broadened my understanding of who Jesus was in the context of history and in his culture, all the while staying grounded in the mystery of God's love and the stories from Scripture that nurtured my childhood faith. I'm excited for all the opportunities in all aspects of ministry to model and share my faith with others, to help them reconnect to their faith stories, and openly explore how their stories connect with God's sacred story, fostering a sense of community and belonging, creating healthy partnerships, and offering safe spaces to wonder and to discern together just what God is up to. And all the while, bringing a sense of hope and awe, trusting in God's timing to bear the fruit. In today's fractured and polarized world, isn't the need for reconnection more urgent than ever? The cacophony of worldly issues often drowns out the voice of God's love, which so many desperately need to hear. In the words of Frederick Buechner, your vocation in life comes from where your greatest joy meets the world's greatest need. For me in my ministry, and perhaps for you, some of that joy can be found in helping others reconnect to the vine, to the mystery of God's love through Christ, and find their best selves. Thanks be to God. Amen.
This person has previously been recognized as a designated lay minister. Now he has met the requirements of our church to enter the order of ministry. He has been prayerfully examined and tested, and has with us discerned God's call to ministry. Greg Simpson, OM. Recognized as a DLM in 2016 while serving at Calvary United in Rodney. He has served at St. Andrews since 2018 and will continue to serve after ordination.
So, there's no video? Okay. Thank you so much, Tanya, for your presentation of our candidates, and we look forward to celebrating with them this afternoon. At this time, I'd like to turn things, where are we on the map? Okay, let's turn things over to our second commission, to Discipleship and Justice. I believe there's a video from that commission.
Greetings from the Discipleship and Justice Commission of the Antler River Watershed Regional Council. My name is Joshua Lawrence. I am the co-chair of the Discipleship and Justice Commission along with Lillian Pate. I am currently also serving as minister of First St. Andrews United Church, and between these two very important responsibilities, I am still learning how to juggle effectively, and I know that's something that all of you can appreciate and are doing yourself. I did submit a written report, and you will have heard or will hear a short video about some of the work being done with camps. That is one of our priorities as a regional body. We know that youth and young adults benefit and have transformative experiences at these camps, and so we are always, as a commission, striving to find ways to support the creative programming that is going to do the most in terms of outreach, connection, and transformation, not just for our region, but for the world. There are a few other things, and I suppose to begin, one thing I could share is that I'm fairly new. I'm a transplant from Texas, and you may have already detected that just in listening to my voice. I moved here about 3 years ago. I'm still on the immigration journey, but I've enjoyed being a part of the United Church of Canada. I come from a sibling denomination, the United Church of Christ, and I've enjoyed serving alongside all of you, getting to meet many of you, and learning how to do this thing in a new place. With some different practices, but certainly enough similarities to make it not only possible, but exciting. So I came to the Discipleship and Justice Commission approximately a year into my time in London. And the reason I did is because I joined the United Church of Christ and was introduced to the United Church of Canada as well at that time through social justice, through outreach, through the work of so many people to be the church. I recognize that there are many other things that have to be dealt with in order for us to get to do the social justice and outreach, but that was an element, an indispensable element of the gathered body that I knew that I wanted to participate in. I didn't know I was going to be co-chairing it in a short while, but I'm happy to have stepped into this job and be learning the ropes, as they say. So one of the things that has appealed to me is not only the interesting collection of persons who have unique perspectives, insights into these different issues, but the variety of issues that we get to tackle. Now, some of you know that our priority as Antler River Watershed Regional Council are the camps, youth and young adults, which we've named, right relations, which I think we're really just beginning to have the sorts of conversations we need to have around reconciliation and reparation. I personally preached a sermon on Orange Shirt Sunday, as many of you probably did as well, where we spoke about, I believe, 13 calls to action being completed, and so of the 94. So we as a church, I think, have a large responsibility in terms of lifting those up and insisting morally and spiritually that we have a responsibility to our friends, to our siblings who are Indigenous. And I celebrate the establishment of an autonomous Indigenous body. I celebrate the remit. We certainly have discussed that, lifted that up, tried to spread word about that and educate communities. There were webinars conducted, and so I'm very thankful to have participated in some small way in that. I also know that we seek to take steps to live into our affirm mandate. As a regional body, we're an affirming regional body, and that includes education. It also includes marketing, letting people know that we're here. I used to joke with people back home in Texas that the best kept secret in Christianity is mainline or liberal Protestant churches. Not enough people know what we believe and what we seek to do and the kind of world we're trying to co-create. And so that's another reason why I joined this commission, is I wanted to help spread the word. Recently, we submitted a letter as the Discipleship and Justice Commission opposing the closure of safe consumption sites, which is connected to the larger harm reduction model that has been adopted in our province in many settings. We know that it saves lives. I have spoken with service providers in many different locations, and they have given me stories about people whose lives have been transformed because they received care at safe consumption sites. As a commission, most of what we have done has been deliberation because we live in different places, but that's another thing that we're working on. We're trying to activate gathering, taking some social justice, at the very least, letting you know about what's happening in case you want to come. Now, recently, there was a gathering and basically lifting up the plight of Grassy Narrows and the contamination that occurred there some time ago. That was in Toronto, but there were buses organized. And so we as a Discipleship and Justice Commission are trying to let people know of opportunities to plug in, to be the church, to be the hands and feet. And I know that's what excites me about being a part of this Discipleship and Justice Commission. You can, of course, refer to the report to see some of the other details that were put down there, but I know we're always looking for new voices and insight and perspective. Not this weekend, but the following weekend, there will be a conference in Toronto that's looking at the Israel-Palestine conflict. And we know that the genocide that has been going on there is an absolutely unacceptable situation, to say the least. The World Council of Churches and countless other religious bodies, communities of faith and conscience have spoken against the ongoing efforts to displace and to destroy a people. And so we very much want to speak against that, and that has been a part of our conversations. We had a special meeting as the Discipleship and Justice Commission, sending a letter of support to the president at the University of Windsor because of the way that person handled the student encampments. We believe there is a way forward, and it does not involve violence. It does not involve the conflict with weapons that we see raging in our world today. that's why we're here. That's why we're a part of this commission, and I'm glad that we receive the support of so many, and I'm certainly happy to be learning as we go. I hope that this has been at least a window into my experience of the Discipleship and Justice Commission, and I know you can ask any of our commissioners and they'll share their own unique connection to this work, but grateful to be a part of the United Church of Canada, and grateful that I get to be a part of this commission and this denomination, which always supports these initiatives to be the hands and feet of Christ on earth. Thank you.
Our regional camps had a great summer this year. For instance, let us check out some of what happened at Kenessary Camp this spring. Antler River Watershed Regional Council has 5 camps: Kiamoki, Pierce Williams, Lanton Center, Guestwood, and Kenessary. Like all communities of faith, our best resources and strength come from the people who show up and love both the place and the ministry shared, starting with the children and their families, and moving on to the amazing staff, which includes exemplary directors. Our camps offer intentional faith formation and fantastic lifelong leadership skills. The volunteer boards and all those like you who support the camps with time, money, and prayers help to make this ministry thrive. Camp Kenessary pulled off a miracle this year. They moved 6 cabins to new foundations and built a brand new dining hall and serving area in record time. Never underestimate what can be done with excellent leadership, a solid foundation, and an overarching love of God.
Impressive to see those big buildings just carry down the road. That's kind of cool. Thank you so much for your report. And if we are ready to move on, I'll turn it over to you, Executive Minister. Yeah, that.
Thank you very much, President Cheryl. And again, thank you so much for all of our presentations that we're going to have yesterday and are having today from the commissions to help us engage in the work a little bit to see what is being done. This actually follows up very nicely with the discussion by Discipleship and Justice around the need to work on social justice issues. And what I'm going to talk about a little bit is the way that the United Church of Canada has now decided to go about that at General Council. There is was a proposal at General Council 44 to create a principle-based approach on working with justice issues. And so at this most recent General Council 44 annual meeting, there was a presentation given on this principle-based approach, and then some decisions were made based on that. And part of the idea is that it's a principle-based approach for the General Council and the wider church to be using. But the hope is that it also gives a framework for regional councils and for individual churches, congregations, when they're talking about different justice issues, as opposed to relying on, well, what does our policy say? This gives us a little bit more freedom in being able to respond more readily and in different ways to what our policy was around how to respond to different justice issues. I am going to be sharing my screen at the same time here. So what I'm going to be sharing with you is a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation that was given as part of a learning session from General Counsel. So if you are a General Counsel 44 Commissioner, you will have seen this already. So I do apologize for that. However, that's only probably 13 of you who are here at the most. So there's a lot more who could, we're hoping, benefit from the understanding and just getting an idea of what the wider church is doing here. So this is a presentation that was created by Reverend Ariel Saigen, who is a Theology and Interchurch Interfaith Committee member, and also the Reverend Dr. Jennifer Jansen-Ball, who's the Executive Minister of Theology and Ministry Leadership of the General Counsel Office. So at one point, I think during this presentation, we start to use the acronym, if you've ever heard it, TICIF. That is the Theology and Interchurch Interfaith Committee, is TICIF, because it's much easier to say. But I know that sometimes acronyms, I didn't fully know what it was until I could read it on the screen in front of me. Okay, one of the problems of being in a room with other people is when they make comments that are quite funny on the background and no one else can hear. I hear them and then I crack up. So, yeah, not a problem. All right. So again, this presentation is one that was written and delivered by Ariel and Jennifer. And so what I've done is I have just changed the language when it talks about I and have put their names in instead. So the Theology Interfaith Interchurch Committee is offering here the Principles of Justice document that was approved by the General Counsel in 2023. And so namely, there are these different priorities and principles for a justice-based approach. There is anti-oppression, truth-telling, holistic scope, respecting human dignity, full participation and decolonization, equity, mutuality, respect, and reparations, and costly and prophetic solidarity. These 7 principles constitute how the TICIF, after collectively wrestling with the different properties, facets, and dimensions of justice, understand its ministries of justice. It is a reminder that the General Counsel adopted these 7 principles last year in 2023. We will be offering to tell you now the backstory of these principles by expanding on 3 organizing concepts, expanding on the concepts of decolonization, truth-telling, and prophetic solidarity. Ariel hopes to make clear that the animating spirit that inspires and moves these principles of justice is the suffering victim. So the spirit of the principles, decolonization. In talking about decolonization, it is imperative to acknowledge that colonization happened. The document understands colonization as firstly an event, secondly, as a contemporary structure of domination, and thirdly, as something that has to be transformed. First, colonization is an event that is intentional, not accidental. Colonialism is intentional. Colonizers were inspired and empowered by governing rationalities, meaning the colonizers did not just go eastward to look for spices and then the native population thought they were gods. Ariel will cite two governing reasons that propelled colonialism. First is the idea of terra nullius, or the assumption that the land in which the colonizers landed is empty. The assumed emptiness of the land was settlers' justification to occupy and benefit from the indigenous lands in North America. And because of that assumption, colonizers brought people from the African continent to work on the land as cheap source of labor power made docile by the violent force of the colonial masters. Second is manifest destiny, the assumption that the white Europeans were ordained by God to settle in North America. The same governing reasons inspired U.S. President McKinley to colonize the Philippines and many nations in the Caribbean and Latin America. He said God appeared in his dream, ordaining him to colonize the Philippines because Filipinos, their small brown brothers, are unable to govern themselves. It always spells trouble when God appears on someone's dream. Those are just two of the most prominent governing rationalities that spurred and inspired colonialism. It's important to bring out and expose and eventually to dismantle the governing rationalities that inspired colonialism, because those governing assumptions became structures of domination in the contemporary time. Colonialism has evolved and has been formalized through the laws of the land and its international policies. And you will not be surprised that the same governing rationality that inspired colonizers in the past is the same governing rationality that informs the creation of laws and policies. Not only do we see the enforcement of colonial rationality, but also the same colonial model is replicated in many places. Where else do we see settler colonialism happening? Just like white Europeans exterminating the native population in the past. What is our assessment of the Palestine situation? And where else do we see the massive transport of people from their native countries to work on the land? They call forced migration as a form of modern-day slavery because the governing assumptions, the assumption that the land is empty, that the white Europeans are saviors, the same governing assumption that transported Africans to new land, inspires modern-day slavery. Consider how migrants are disposable in the framework of Canadian immigration policy. There are fewer pathways to citizenship, and there are more reasons created to enable migrant deportation. Again, to reiterate the obvious, immigrants, just as slavery in the past, in the eyes of the colonizers and in the present regime, are sources of cheap labor, power, and made docile by the forces of the state. All this is to say that colonization is an intentional event, inspired by governing assumptions as opposed to an accident, and it continues to this day as regulatory policies of the state. Thus, the need to decolonize, and this is the third point about justice. Decolonization, we understand, is not a return to an idyllic past. There is no idyllic past to return to. To decolonize is the first to acknowledge and expose those governing rationalities that replicate itself automatically. The decolonization task is to prevent the automatic replication that support, strengthen, promote, uphold, legitimize colonial structures, and by creating alternative structures that will allow people who are pushed to positions of marginality to exercise their agency. Next, we have truth. This document understands truth to be emerging from the voices of those who are suffering. The experience of suffering brings out new reasons that are oftentimes in conflict with the existing dominant reasons. These existing dominant reasons are expressed in our laws, government policies, or in our churches with the way we do liturgies or our Bible studies. For example, Testimonies of undocumented migrants produces new rationalities, which is in conflict with the law. In the understanding of the law, they are undocumented and therefore not worthy to receive health care and assistance during times of crisis, not eligible for anything. This is aptly expressed by the legal framework of them being considered illegal. Immigrant solidarity movements, however, would assert that no person is illegal. In the same manner that our faith traditions inform us that every person is made in the image of God, we see the surfacing of conflict between our faith tradition and the law. Between this conflict, which do you think is the truth? The concept of justice that these documents forwards is informed by the truth emerging from the experience of suffering. Truth is privileging suffering, letting a new rationality to emerge from people who are experiencing injustice. How then do we discern truth? Discernment of truth is creating spaces for the voices of suffering to be heard. The rise of social and sectoral movements based on shared suffering is inevitable with the creation of policies that push people to positions of marginality. Attention to emerging social movements and sectoral movements is important. New rationalities are emerging from these movements that challenge the existing notions about citizenship, states' resources, and even theology. For example, the rise of international student movements has emerged from the stricter rules on pathways to acquire work permits. Or consider the rise of political movements from racialized communities in urban centers. These movements were spurred by the realities of homelessness, food insecurity, prevalent substance abuse, among others. And this exists in stark contrast with affluent buildings and the presence of big banks and the accumulation of wealth by the already wealthy. Truth belongs to the suffering. In determining truth, we ask the critical question of where is power located? Truth emerges from the position of powerlessness, and this is very important. The reference for justice is those who are unjustly treated. And finally, the third point in this section is on prophetic solidarity. In the prophetic tradition of the church, the image of the prophet is almost always against the powerful. Another dimension of it is that the prophet almost always gets killed or demonized or vilified, just as in many cases of the partners of the UCC abroad. Ariel is familiar with many people who belong to UCC partners in the Philippines as elsewhere, that because of their stance to justice, which deviates from the will of the government, were killed by state forces. The subject of solidarity is always the powerless. Otherwise, it is just lobbying. And this is not to impress that there is just one suffering. Our tendency is to classify every form of struggle as just one struggle, or to reduce suffering as a blanket suffering of every oppressed sector. It is also our tendency to think of these emerging struggles as competing struggles, or understanding the prophetic solidarity is to provide spaces for different voices of emancipation to arise. And the prophet is never confused because the prophet knows the will of God. The prophet sees a different vision of the future that differs from the vision of the ruling order. And the reference for this visions are always the people who have been disenfranchised by systems of domination. These are three of the main organizing concepts of the document. Expanding on these organizing concepts, Ariel has made clear that the center in which justice revolves around is the experience of suffering. One significant thing that this document does is to give us a theological language that allows us to understand the complexities of our social environment today, that accounts of histories and intricacies, and yet is not confused by those complexities and intricacies. We will not be confused if we anchor our decisions and look from the eyes of the suffering victim. So there are 4 pieces to an ethical framework. This is based on Roger Hutchinson's method. And so this is now part of Reverend Dr. Jennifer Jansen Ball's presentation. So the first of the 4 stages is attention to your own initial reactions. So these stages are a way of looking at a justice issue. When a justice issue is brought before you, to go through these stages. In diaconal ministry, we reference a spiral as a way to theologically reflect by going around. So that is a similar idea. So you start by looking to an attention of your own initial reactions, storytelling, and a definition of the problem. So this includes naming emotions, experiences, loyalties, what your initial response is, including your emotional reaction, is data that we can then use for further reflection. The definition of the problem is different, but part of this first step as well. It may not be clear, or it may change later on. You may name several problems initially before one becomes clear that it is the more foundational problem. This piece is from Chris Lind. The role of storytelling is an integral aspect of theological and ethical reflection. We are surfacing where we're coming from in this stage. So how we define the problem affects what we think should be done about it, what strategies, tactics, and options there are to address and respond to the problem. So here's an example of a case study, which we'll remember this to reference throughout the next 4 stages, or 3 stages as well. So an example, in 2015, a proposal was before the General Council to have the National Church divest from fossil fuel companies. Some commissioners from Alberta voiced their concern about the proposal. At that time, the price of oil had gone down, companies were downsizing, people were losing their jobs. They expressed dismay and hurt that the church would take this step, as it felt like the church was abandoning them at a time when they were really hurting. Their definition of the problem was the need for a pastoral response from the church. Jennifer wasn't a commissioner, but she supported the proposal as someone who had been committed to ecological issues her entire life. And indeed, her first experience of the wider church that helped her realize the church was involved in issues in the world was around environmental issues. At the same time, Jennifer's brother in Calgary was an archaeologist who worked for a company that relied heavily on contracts from extractive industry companies. His job was at risk because of the downturn in the oil company. Jennifer defined the problem as the church trying to be consistent with its expressed values and actions. As you think about this case study and the stage of storytelling from your own experience, what connections do you have to this topic? What are your experiences, emotions, assumptions? How would you define the problem of the proposal to have the national church divest from fossil fuel companies that came in 2015? The next step is a description of facts or factual clarification. Naming empirical data that you're using or drawing upon, you evaluating contesting data and claims that become resolved by appealing to scientific research, noting that the claims aren't debatable, but that the significance of the claim relies precisely on the worldview. Here is where we would note how many positions would have been lost, the climate change statistics, what the church's investments were relative to the overall bottom line for the big 5 fossil fuel companies, the impact of resources extractive industries on communities and nations around the world, the social safety net in Canada, things like that. So what facts come to mind for you in relation to this case study and this stage? Bear in mind that these should be scientifically verifiable facts, not opinions on the issue. We then move to ethical clarification. What do we think should be done about the situation and why? What are the value judgments being made, and what are the reasons given for such judgments? What norms are we using? What virtues are reflected or drawn upon? Principles, consequences, way of life, vision of the good society may all be factors that are described in this level. In this case study, there could be at least two different understandings of the duty people think the church has. The duty of the church is to support its members and be pastoral when the members are hurting. The duty of the church is to live out its professed values in concrete ways, i.e., not be hypocritical. There can be different goals or visions of the good society that can be identified here. One of those is that the end, or good being sought, is not harming creation more. It's the mending of God's world. So what norms or values would you draw on in this case study? What duty or good or end is of primary importance to you? So our justice principles could be drawn, those 7 at the beginning, could be drawn on in this stage, but they also are a part of the 4th stage as they help articulate the United Church's commitments around justice. So the final stage of this reflection piece is post-ethical clarification, identifying reconsiderations. So worldviews, religious convictions or motivations, confessing one's faith, ultimate issues, underlying beliefs about human life, clarification of identities. This is a reflective stage around checking our ethical responses against our worldview. So in this case study, we can see that there are 2 different worldviews that come into play here. For some, the primary worldview emphasis is a pastoral one. For others, the primary worldview is a prophetic justice-seeking one. Our worldviews inform and influence how we respond to experiences, to emotions, to how we define the problem or issue, what facts we draw on, and what we think should be done about the situation. So this is where Jennifer would place the principles. They are the United Church's religious convictions and motivations. They describe for the church who we long to be as God's people in the world and help to guide our actions. So again, once again, you can see those there of being anti-oppression, truth-telling, holistic scope, respecting human dignity, full participation in decolonization, equity, mutuality, respect, and reparations, and costly and prophetic solidarity. The principles of justice, as was stated, can be placed in both stage 3 ethical clarification and in stage 4 post-ethical clarification and religious convictions. The principles for justice articulate for the United Church of Canada state, and they state what the church wants to be in the world. They call us into the longing that God has for the world and give us direction about how we continue to live into that call. So that is the presentation that was given to General Council in a learning session before the last General Council meeting. And so this presentation, obviously, as Michele has put in the chat, this meeting is being recorded, so you'll be able to find it in the recording there. You can also, Jennifer Jansen-Ball works for as I said, works for the General Council office. So if you wish a copy of something, you can always inquire. I'm not sure she was willing to pass it on to me, but you would need to request it directly from her if you want the actual text or something like that. But she knew I was giving it in this session, so that was fine. But I can't say that I can pass it on past that because it wasn't mine that I created. So also, normally after something like this, we would take questions. But again, as I'm just kind of passing on other information, if you have any questions, I would ask you to maybe direct them to Jennifer, as she would be much better able to respond than I would at this time. But thanks for listening. I know it's a heavy topic. There were a lot of proposals that came to General Council 44 around Palestine, Israel. And this came out of that as also wanting there to be this principle-based approach, not just for dealing with the with the conflict in the Middle East, but for all of our those positions. I honestly don't. I believe that there was a motion to divest, but I honestly don't know for sure. Who was at General Council 2015? Someone here has to have been. But thank you very much. Appreciate everyone taking the time to engage with that. And Michele has just put Jennifer's email. So if you have any questions, you can contact her about that as well. I'll pass it back to you, President.
Thank you, Executive Minister Mark. And thank you for the presentation. I would encourage you to re-listen to the conversation and ask questions and direct them, of course, to Jennifer. And yes, it's wonderful. At this time, we are going to take a bit of a break, time to refill your coffee mug and reread the proposals, because immediately following the break, we're going to take a 15-minute break. And immediately following that break, we are going to deal with the proposals. So do a quick reread of the proposals and meet you back here at 1:15, I believe. Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry, proposals 3, 4, and 5. Yes, I'm making assumptions. That's page 25 and forward. Okay. Back at 10:20. That gives you 15 minutes. Thank you very much, and thank you to everyone who has presented today.
Proposal number 3, which can be found on page 25 of your workbook. So all 3 of these proposals, just to save some time, like I know as our proposal procedure, we're supposed to start by talking about what's the issue and why is this issue important. You may have noticed that what is the issue and why is this issue important is the same for all 3. What part of what is happening here is the executive wanted to look at what we're doing with the funds from the sale of property when congregations disband. The regional council gets 25% of that. And so what are we doing with that 25%? So the issue is when a congregation disbands and sell their property, a portion of those proceeds come to the regional council to be used to enable it to provide ongoing support and resources for communities of faith and for new church development. The issue is that this statement is fairly vague. So it's vague enough to enable us to do a lot of things, but it's also vague enough that it becomes challenging to act upon. And so what the executive talked about was creating some different granting opportunities or funds available for communities of faith within Antler River Watershed to access. There already are some granting opportunities and funds available. If you go to the website and look under financial resources, you can see there's, I want to say 5 or 6, I don't remember off the top of my head, but different funds that communities of faith can apply to for different things. And so this was trying to create a couple more in ways that we don't already have. So this issue is important because as the regional council, we do want to honor the legacy of those who have paved the way before us, and then to be able to continue to help serve active communities of faith. So proposal number 3 is entitled the Bridge Loan Fund. And so what the regional council might do is create the following fund, setting it up with an initial transfer of $300,000 from the property fund. So what the terms of reference then would be for the fund would be that we would be able to offer bridging loans to communities of faith to a maximum of $30,000, a maximum of 1/3 of the monies in the fund to be granted in one calendar year. So that would mean in the first calendar year, a maximum of $100,000 would be able to be granted. The granting body and oversight would be the ARW Regional Council Executive, and the executive would report annually to the Regional Council on how the funds have supported communities of faith with bridging loans. And then the criteria could be that a bridge financing loan to a max of $30,000 at 4% interest to be paid back on a 3-year term, starting 6 months after the loan is received by the community of faith, those 6 months being at 0% interest. There would also be no penalty if a community of faith wishes to pay the loan faster. And if a community of faith has more than $100,000 in unrestricted reserves, they're ineligible to apply for this loan. Applications would be completed by a community of faith and submitted to the ARW executive. So the concept behind this would be, say a community of faith is meeting their budget, or not meeting their budget, and all of a sudden their furnace goes and they need a new furnace, and they don't have $20,000 to get a new furnace right now. So they need some help to be able to get the new furnace, but then can pay it off over a 3-year period. So it would be things like that is kind of the idea behind it, but obviously the loan can be for anything. It's meant to be a bridging loan to help a community of faith out when they need a little bit of extra money. So, President Cheryl, we can take some questions for clarification, and I can see one in the
Yes. Okay. So yes, there is a question in the chat from Dave Whiting. Hang on a second. There we go. Clarification on this proposal. Does a community of faith also include incorporated ministries such as our 5 camps?
So a community of faith, it would be considered, is a very broad term, which is why we use that term instead of congregations. If the camps have entered into a covenantal relationship with the regional council, then yes, they would be considered a community of faith. If a incorporated ministry or ministry has not entered into a covenantal relationship with the regional council, but is acting as a incorporated ministry, then they would not be considered a community of faith. And there's a second clarifying question there as well. President Cheryl, do you want me to just read it?
Yeah.
Okay. So what is the working definition of bridge loan, and what circumstances would qualify? Muted myself. So as in the proposal, the bridge loan, the idea is that it is a short-term loan to help a community of faith get through something on a short-term basis. So all of these loans would be meant to be paid back on a 3-year term. So it would actually be 3 years and 6 months, as you don't have to pay anything back in the first 6 months. So the concept is to bridge a community of faith through a time where they had a short-term need for some money that they couldn't otherwise get. And what circumstance would qualify? Part of that would be what is asked in the application, the information we get. This loan doesn't, or the document doesn't specify what qualifies or what doesn't. Basically, what qualifies is, does the community of faith need this money on a short-term basis, and from their financial documents, can we see that they would be able to pay the loan back. But unlike other funds or grants, there is no strict of, oh, well, you have to use the money for this. We understand there are lots of reasons why communities of faith may need a short-term loan to help them through something. So the executive, and I should have said at the beginning, all three of these proposals that I'm talking about, the executive put together and are being brought forward by the executive. I'm just speaking to them, but it wasn't, I'm not the one who created them and put them in. Okay, so the only thing that would disqualify a community of faith from being able to access this loan is if they had over $100,000 in unrestricted reserves. Because the idea being, if you have over $100,000 in unrestricted reserves, the executive would prefer that you use that instead of coming for a loan when another community of faith might not have that and actually need the money in a different sort of way. So we have another question, President Cheryl. Just keep going. Okay. From Rob Hawken, would the bridge loan be available on very short-term time frame? Broken furnaces and leak will need to be acted quickly in some cases. So yes, so the executive meets monthly. So we would be able to at least be approving anything on a monthly basis. However, the executive is able to call a special meeting when there is an emergent issue, so to speak, like that sort of thing. The reason for so acting quickly is it probably from the time that the request comes in, and from the time the executive approves the request, it still probably takes about a week and a half to 2 weeks for money to be able to be sent out, just because that's the time frame for money to go through the general counsel office. But you would know about the approval, and then it would still take a couple of weeks. So that hopefully allows the church to start the work knowing that the money is coming. So then we have another question from Marg Larocque. Why was 4% interest rate chosen, and what might this be? And might this be changed in the future depending on market rates or other criteria? So I'll answer the second part of that that question first. Yes, it can be changed in the future. All three of these proposals that are coming before you, so this will answer any clarifying question for all of them. Because we're creating them as a regional council, the regional council or executive can change the terms of them quite easily. It's not like if someone sends the regional council a bequest and says, I want you to use this money for this purpose. Then we have to use it for that purpose and we can't change it. The regional council and regional council executive can change the criteria on these because we're the ones that created. So these are considered internally restricted funds, not externally restricted. So the 4% interest rate was chosen as for the regional council for a lot of our investments right now, as we talked about in the budget before. Most of our GICs that we have are at about 5%. We're getting between 4 and 5% on those. We're using a 4.5% suggested rate. And so the executive wanted to choose a rate that was a little bit lower than that, trying to give communities of faith a break. If we just invested the money, the regional council could make more than 4%. So we wanted to choose a number that allowed for a little bit of help with the community of faith, as it could be challenging to get a 4% interest rate on a $20,000 loan at a bank. But at the same time, the executive didn't feel that they wanted to go to 2 or 2.5, because the interest that is created would then also allow for the fund to grow, to then allow for more money to be able to give into other people as well. My math is really short on this, but if my memory serves me correct, I think our treasurer, Doug Cameron, said that a $30,000 loan on that 3-year term would equate to monthly payment in between $800 and $900 over the 3-year term is, I believe, what he said. Another question by Pat Morrison: what are the inputs to the property fund? Also, for all of you who are asking these questions, if I haven't answered it fully, please either raise your virtual hand and let me know. What are the inputs to the property fund? Does it hold funds that come from closed communities of faith? Yes. is the answer. The current property fund, when a community of faith is disbands and is the building or property is sold, we have a property fund policy, which can be found on our website, where a certain percentage of the money of a disbanding community of faith, when it disbands, the community of faith can decide where it sends a portion of the money to what United Church Charities, a portion of the money goes to Indigenous ministries, a portion goes to Mission and Service, to the Endowment Fund and Mission and Service Fund, and then a portion of the money comes to the Regional Council. So what we're talking about here is that portion of the money from a disbanding community of faith that comes to the Regional Council. What we also have right now is we also have the possibility of a property trust that we're working with UPRC and Kindred Works, or UPRD and Kindred Works. And so when a community of faith closes and disbands, and it is possible now that the Congregational Support Commission and the executive might ask that community of faith to not sell their building, but instead place the building into the regional trust to be redeveloped in any number of ways, but to hopefully have an ongoing income. And then when that happens, and it obviously takes years for that to happen, but once that income stream starts coming in, then that income stream would then also be sent out according to the property policy. So assuming that property then starts making whatever number of dollars a year, the Regional Council will get 25% of that, and that would go into the property fund. So it wouldn't go, as communities of faith continue, if they disband and we get money, it goes to the property fund. It doesn't go to these funds. We're just taking money from the property fund to create these. So I'm not seeing any other questions for clarification.
Okay, not seeing any more questions for clarifications. Has the motion will be moved and seconded by Kerry, moved by Kerry and seconded by Richard Auckland. Now we are open for debate. Yeah, so if you have if you would like to speak to the motion, please raise your virtual hand. Again, reminder for those on phone, it's *9. We'll raise your hand as well. Yes, and the raise hand is under the reaction tab. And if you're not seeing it on your screen, push those 3 little dots that say more underneath of them, and you'll find it in there.
President Cheryl, I'm seeing none.
All right, seeing no discussion, may I have the poll please put up? And a reminder again that if you are voting by phone, *9 if you are in favor, and if you are opposed, you don't vote at all.
No, 17 minutes. Now we have 3. Everyone's voted.
Okay, mine's come up differently. Okay. Oh, I got it. All right. Perfect. Can we have the poll closed now? And we are carried. Proposal number 2, or sorry, proposal number 4. I have to remember where number we're at. hang on a second.
Thank you, President Cheryl. So again, I'm going to skip by the what is the issue because it's the same. The issue and why it's important is the same. So we're going to go straight to what might the regional council do on this one. So this is, again, coming from the executive and this was coming from the executive, but was brought to our attention from our executive members who served on the Human Resources Commission. And so this is a proposal entitled Moving Expense Fund. And so what the regional council might do is they might create the following fund entitled the Moving Expense Fund by setting it up with a transfer of $100,000 from the property fund. So in the terms of reference, so the available funds, 50% of moving costs incurred by a community of faith for new ministry personnel being hired by a community of faith up to a grant of $10,000. When new money comes into the property fund, as we discussed just previously how that would happen, the executive will assess if funds need to be added to this fund, to the moving expenses fund. Once again, this proposal is suggesting that the ARW Regional Council Executive be the granting body and oversight. And again, the executive will report annually to the Regional Council on how the funds have supported communities of faith when hiring new ministry personnel. Criteria. So a grant of 50% of moving expenses up to $10,000 be granted to communities of faith who apply for the fund when they have hired new ministry personnel who are required to relocate for the new call or appointment. So before I continue, I'm just going to answer the clarifying question right now. It is $10,000 that can be granted. So the moving expenses incurred can be up to $20,000 is what this is. If a community of faith, again, has more than $100,000 in unrestricted reserves, then they are ineligible to apply for this grant. If the congregation ends the pastoral relationship with the ministry personnel within 3 years of receiving the grant, then the grant is to be repaid to the moving expense fund by the congregation. Communities of faith are only eligible for a moving expenses grant once every 3 years. That is, so if something happens and the community of faith, the pastoral relationship ends within the first 3 years, the community of faith would not then be eligible if they're hiring a new minister within those 3 years to apply for the grant again. Again, applications to be completed by community of faith and submitted to the ARW executive. Yeah. So I guess one small piece of the what is the issue that I probably could have been added in here is the fact that it does happen. It does happen that communities of faith who are looking for new clergy are sometimes don't hire the minister that is right for them because they can't afford to bring that minister from Newfoundland or from wherever, or just as an example. And so this is trying to help communities of faith and clergy find the fit that is actually right. Okay, so I see some questions for clarification, President Cheryl. Would you like me to just do similar to what we did before?
Sure.
Sure.
It saves us
turning on and on our mics. Okay. Okay, so from Maria Santos, I stated the funds can only be distributed to communities of faith who have covenanted with the regional council. That was for the bridging loans. In this instance, every community of faith, which in this case we would be using also the term congregation, who are hiring clergy as what we would historically think of as a church hiring a clergy. They all have been covenanted with the regional council as that happened when we moved over. What is meant from Pat Morrison? What is meant by new ministry personnel? Does that mean this grant is only available to communities of faith calling newly ordained commission ministry personnel? No, that is not what was meant, but I can see how that was could be seen. What we mean is when a community of faith hires a new minister. So when it is a new ministry personnel to that community of faith. A new pastoral relationship. Thank you, Pastoral Relations Minister Michele Cottrell gives me the correct language. New pastoral relationship is probably the language that we should put in there instead, because that would make it more
less confusing.
Yeah. For a new pastoral relationship. So I don't know that we can change it on the fly, but I'm going to ask our executive assistant, Max, to note that that in the beginning, when it says 50% of moving costs incurred by a community of faith for a new pastoral relationship, up to a grant of $10,000 is the language that we are using. And then that's also in criteria A, who apply for the fund when they have hired new ministry personnel, when they have begun a new pastoral relationship. We will change that information out, that language out. Oh, I haven't thought of that. Our Minister for Pastoral Relations sent me a question directly, which I will read out. Is the repayment when if a community of faith ends the pastoral relationship prorated? The executive did not talk about that. So as it stands with what is being said here, no, it is not. It would be the full extent. We're not assuming that that would happen very often. That communities of faith end their pastoral relationship in the first 3 years. But, okay. So asking about the, Susan McLiven is asking, is the language in the criteria section correct? Do communities of faith themselves call the ministry personnel, and do they hire ministry personnel? Yes, they do. The ministry personnel is called and hired, but we're also going to be changing that to starting a new pastoral relationship. So that that should help with some of that. 2 questions from Rick Maya. First, can we qualify based on having just experienced these expenses 3 weeks ago? I don't know. That would be a question. I'm not sure. We don't have the fund yet, so there is nothing to apply to yet. That will be something that the executive can think on when receiving an application. Obviously, that will only apply at the current time, because once the fund is created, it will be ongoing. So what I would say to that is that for any of the funds that we have, someone can always apply whether they think the criteria fits them or not. And then it's up to the granting body to decide whether the criteria fits at that time. Second question, what if funds are not available? Can we qualify once funds are available in the fund? I would imagine so, but again, that would come to the executive. There is only, obviously, again, so much money in the fund. This would also be one where, as it was stated, if there is over $100,000 in the unrestricted reserves, then that community of faith would not be eligible. I think, like every other fund as well, it would also be hoped that if the community of faith did not, if the money wasn't necessarily a barrier in hiring the ministry personnel, that they might think about whether they wanted to apply or not. What I would also suggest in thinking about this, oh no, that's good. Yeah, never mind. So that again would be one where if a community of faith applies and there are not funds in there, the executive would then have to make a decision as to if they're going to add more funds to it from the property fund, or if they can reimburse that community of faith at a later time. It is one where we'll just have to see where it goes, right? We've never had anything like this before. Which is cool. I think that's really great that we're thinking outside the box in different ways of trying to help communities of faith. but we all have to also understand that we're going to have to live into this because we've never done a grant like this before. I can see you on the screen, Rick. Does that answer your questions? Can you give me a thumbs up? Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, new pastoral relations wording. Yep, that's what we're going to use. So I have another question that was directly messaged to me. If the grant deemed a loan to the community of faith and taken from the assets if the community of faith disbands during the 3-year period? It's not considered, it is not considered a loan. However, my interpretation of that question would be, if a community of faith disbands, they are ending the pastoral relationship. And so they would not have to repay the loan out of their own, like their own money. But what would happen then is when a community of faith disbands and they sell their property, any outstanding things that are on against the property or outstanding loans get paid before the money starts to be dispersed according to our property policy. So that would be one of those where if the community of faith disbands in that 3-year period, I would consider that ending the community of faith, ending the pastoral relationship. And so when the building is sold, the up to $10,000 would come back to the fund before it was dispersed in other ways. Richard Auckland has a question. If a community of faith calls a minister, then calls a second minister, would they be able to apply for the grant twice, seeing as it involves 2 separate individuals? No. As it states in, according to what the grant is stating here, in section D, communities of faiths are only eligible for a moving expense grant once every 3 years. So they would be eligible for a second one, but not in the 3 years. What if the ministry personnel ends the pastoral relationship? If the from Pat Whitten, if the ministry personnel ends the pastoral relationship, then the community of faith is not required to pay back this grant. That was a simple answer. Question from Greg Braun. Was any thought given to having declining grants amounts for congregations with slightly more than $100,000 in unrestricted funds? The answer to that is no. A thought was not given to that. As how this grant is currently set up, the maximum that could be granted is $10,000. And so that would only be 10% of your unrestricted funds that is being given. And that seems like a reasonable, the executive felt that seemed like a reasonable amount to ask a congregation to have to be paying for that. So no, there was no thought to that. Would there be a possibility for from Michele Owens, would there be a possibility for an exemption to the once every 3 years rule in the rare circumstance that the minister or region ended the pastoral relationship within the first 3 years?
Yeah.
That is possible, yes. Again, what I would say to that, Michele, is that as I have stated before, if as executive minister, if I'm going to make a mistake, I'm going to make a mistake erring on the side of compassion. And as I said to a previous question, someone can always apply, and then it would be up to the executive at that time to deem whether there could be an exception made in one of those rare occurrences. I think generally we try to stick to what is there, because unfortunately what happens is once one exemption is made, people then it can then snowball, and so trying to be careful about that. Jane Van Patter, a wording thing, reading terms of reference. When new money comes into the property fund, the executive will assess the funds need to be added to the fund. Do we need to clarify this by stating into the moving fund? Yes, that makes a lot of sense. We will clarify that in the proposal as well. Our executive assistant, Max, has that. Okay. So I do not see any other questions for clarification, and it does seem like, President Cheryl, as part of our proposal process, there is the friendly amendments kind of get made as we go along with this, and I feel like we have been doing that. So you can still ask if there's anything else that people think that doesn't change the ethos of what this is asking. If there's anything else people think they want to be added in, otherwise we can move into a move and second, and then move into a formal.
Okay, so if there are no other questions for clarification, to clarify friendly amendments, however we want to say that, I'm not seeing any more have popped up in the chat. So the motion has been moved by Richard and Auckland and seconded by Kerry Stover. And I will ask the poll to be put up. Oh, sorry, I forgot this formal debate. We will, sorry.
Oh, can we take the poll down?
Yeah, thank you. Formal discussion now, if there is any. Remember to raise your hand. Okay, we have a request to see the amended proposal. Are we able to do that?
Cue mute.
Second.
And then I need to unmute. We do not, I don't think we can show the amended proposal, but I can speak to what it is. So I don't know if it's helpful to have the amended proposal come up and me talk about the changes, or if I just say them. But again, this is found on page 26 of your workbook. So the available funds, 50% of moving costs incurred by a community of faith for a new pastoral relationship, up to a grant of $10,000. When new money comes into the property fund, the executive will assess if funds need to be added to the moving expense fund. The rest in the granting body and oversight is all the same. And then in the criteria, a grant of 50% of moving expenses up to $10,000 to be granted to communities of faith who apply for the fund when they start a new pastoral relationship, where their new minister is required to relocate for the new call or appointment. If a community of faith has more than 100 restriction, that didn't change. If the congregation ends the pastoral relationship, none of that changed. That language is all the same. Communities of faith only eligible for a moving expense grant once every 3 years. So the two changes were in the terms of reference, available funds, talking about, again, changing the language to pastoral relationship instead of a new ministry personnel being hired, and talking about if funds needed to be added instead of saying to the fund, to the moving expense fund. I hope that helps, Susan. So we have another question. What happens if the money runs out? Then there is no money to be granted in that fund, just like in any of our other funds that we have. If the money runs out, then what happens is the executive, on an annual or semi-annual basis, we are always going over what is in the current funds. And so that is part of in the available funds. When new money comes into the property fund, the executive will assess if funds needed to be added to the moving expense fund. So when communities of faith disband and their buildings are sold, and the regional council receives some of that money, the executive will evaluate whether these funds need to be topped up from that money that comes in.
Any more questions for discussion? Sorry, comments for discussion. Again, use the raise hand.
Or you can speak to
or
against the proposal.
Yeah, to or, yep, against the proposal.
Louise has her hand up.
Oh, Louise, you have your hand up?
Yes, when you go back to that other, if the congregation asks for the pastoral relationship to be ended, I think that needs to be, there needs to be something else in there, because it's actually the Human Resources Commission, I believe, that acts on the requests from the congregation. So it's actually the Human Resources Commission that ends the pastor. Can you just clarify that for me? I just don't want to be hung up on that one.
Hang on 2 seconds. McCall's just getting ready here.
Can you ask the question again, please, Louise? We're going to get our Minister of Pastoral Relations to answer.
It was just the congregation asks, but they're asking the Human Resources Commission to end the pastoral relationship. The congregation doesn't actually end the relationship. I think there needs, I don't know. I'm not a good word person, so.
Yeah, I don't have the proposal right in front of me, but the congregation asks, the minister or the congregation asks the regional council to end the pastoral relationship. So I think a wording for criteria C is if the congregation asks the regional council to end the pastoral relationship. And if it is responsive, if the minister, same thing, it would be asks the regional council.
I have checked with the mover and seconder for this friendly amendment, and they're both good with it. Thank you for your comments. Are there any other hands up? Oh, Tanya, you've asked a question. I'm not.
I can answer. So if a community of faith is, Tanya asked, is our vocational minister. If a community of faith is a supervised ministry education site and a candidate is appointed, will this community of faith be eligible for this grant? The difficulty is the 3-year window, as SME is not that long. I would say yes, from the standpoint of when a candidate is done being at a supervised ministry education site, it is not the pastoral charge that is ending that pastoral relationship. And that is what is the criteria for needing the grants to be paid back. So I would interpret it that could be okay. Again, it would need to come to the executive. That is my interpretation. I am not the executive. So just needing to, I have a lot less power than you guys all think I do. I'm just saying what, how I would read it, but any application is approved by the executive.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
President, I see none.
I see none as well. Now can we have the poll put up? And can I see that? Because I'm not seeing it for some reason or other today.
You gotta be made a co-host.
Oh, that's why. Okay. Never mind. Just a couple seconds longer. And ask you to put the poll down. Oh, put the poll down. And, oh, what is it? Yes, we are, that is carried. Thank you very much for your participation. And we will move on to Proposal 5.
I was going to say, you all are going to be tired of hearing from me, but you're hearing from me so that you can all access money. So maybe you won't be tired of hearing from me by the time we get done this. So Proposal 5 is a collaborative ministry fund. So again, this comes from the ARW executive. Same issue, why is it important? Trying to do something with our property money fund in a way that can support communities of faith. So for this fund, what the regional council might do is they might create the following fund, setting it up with a transfer of $200,000 from the property fund. The collaborative ministry fund, the terms of reference. So available funds. Available funds per year. So this is of the 200,000 that starts. A maximum of $50,000 in total, with a maximum of $10,000 per application or program. So that's meaning the executive can only grant out a maximum of $50,000 in a year, with any one individual application being $10,000. Again, when new money comes into the property fund, the executive will assess if funds need to be added, and we're already right now going to change that language to the collaborative ministry fund. Executive Assistant Max is on it. So again, granting body and oversight, same as the other ones. ARW executive report annually, regional council, how these funds have supported new community of faith initiatives. So our criteria. So these funds are to be given to communities of faith who are working together collaboratively. So there must be a minimum of 2 communities of faith working together collaboratively or towards a collaborative initiative having both community of faith names on the granting application. The grants are to be used, for operations of the collaboration, not capital projects. So for instance, if two communities of faith are coming together and wanting to build a new building, that is not what this grant is available for. But it can be used for operations, so for buying supplies or helping with even staffing costs of something for whatever project the collaboration is looking for. It is a maximum of $10,000, can be granted per grant application or program each year. Communities of faith may only put in 1 application per year. Future grants for the same program or same community of faith are not guaranteed to be at the same level as past grants. So for a couple of the clarification questions that I'm sure will be coming in, I'll try to address them ahead of time. So community of faith, let's just pick, we'll pick Trinity. Someone from here's got to be from a Trinity, right? So Trinity United Church and St. Andrew's United Church apply for a collaborative agreement together. The same St. Andrews, because I know there's lots of them, St. Andrew's United Church and St. Paul's United Church also want to work collaboratively. That program would not be eligible for this grant in that year because St. Andrews already has applied to this grant with another community of faith. We're not trying to discourage communities of faith from working with lots of partners. What we're trying to do is allow the money to be accessed by multiple programs and that it doesn't all go into just one place. And then point E, future grants for the same program or community of faith are not guaranteed to be at the same level as past grants. That is just there as a clarifying statement so that communities of faith have to understand that just because you got $6,000 this year doesn't mean that you will be able to get that much the next year. So the hope is, as this is looking at collaborations and looking at things that are kind of starting something new, the hope is that this can help those things kind of get going, that then can maybe in some ways be a little bit more self-sustaining. It doesn't mean you can't apply in future years. It doesn't mean that there won't be money, but we just want to make sure that people understand, similar to mission support grants, just because you get money one year, it does not mean that you will be getting the same amount in another year. So, all right, so we have some clarifying questions. So the first one from Larry Schneider: must the collaboration be between 2 United Church of Canada communities of faith, or could a United Church Canada community of faith receive one to work with? So can you, what's PCC? What are you? Presbyterian Church. Okay, Presbyterian Church of Canada. Thank you. So how the proposal is, let me see what the wording is. Generally speaking, for our grants that we give, same for mission support grants, they need to go to United Church Ministries. What I would say is, if you had two, so yes, so if you had two United Church of Canada and one Presbyterian church, you could apply because you have two United Church of Canada communities of faith. If you just had one United Church of Canada community of faith with a Presbyterian or other denomination, in that instance, I do not believe you would be eligible for this grant. Again, always apply and see what the executive says. But that is my understanding of the interpretation of this, because in any other grant, for example, the money we've gotten from the sale of a community of faith building, they can only give their portion to United Church charities. So that is part of the honoring of that ethos of this as well, that the money only is going to support a collaboration between United Church communities of faith.
2 questions above and from Brad McMurray and Jen Prince.
Yes. Yeah, so I have, yes, so Brad McMurray is asking, would existing collaborative programs be considered for Proposal 5? Yes, they would. I love easy answers. Jen Prince, would an interfaith initiative be considered eligible? That would be my same answer as before. If you have 2 United Churches and a third interfaith, then yes. How formal must the collaboration be? Is this about official sharing ministry personnel or just offering programming together? I would say it is the latter. It is not about officially sharing ministry personnel. It is about communities of faith working together in thanks, Jen. I just saw the last one. Oh, I think Mark just answered. So yes, it is a informal collaboration, but in the application process, as we said, both. And so for all of these funds, the executive is going to, because they're the granting and oversight body, they will be developing the application form and what information the executive requires in order to make an informed decision for granting things out. And so as a part of this one, it would be, what information does the executive need in order to see what the collaboration is and how that is working. I hope that helps, Joy. From Kathleen Collins Baker, under what specific guidelines does the decision-making body follow to discern supporting a program? Who is setting this up and which commission is looking after the application process? So I believe I just answered that, Catherine. As in the granting body and oversight, it is the executive that it will be making decisions based on that. So the discernment will come from the information that is given from the communities of faith who are in the collaborating ministries, and that we will look after the application process as well. With all of these as well, the thought was that the executive, as again, these are all new and we're figuring out how they go. I would leave it to the executive to decide if this is for this sort of thing. If it's, want applications by June and then a second round in September, or if it is a first come first serve. The executive hasn't had that discussion, but again, as the granting body, I think it would fall under the executive's purview to set up how they would like to receive the grants to try to make it as equitable as possible. The grant requests, sorry, to try to make it as equitable as possible for giving that money out. Are there preset? So Catherine, again, are there preset parameters already for this program? No. There has not been any other work because we also were not sure.
It's not capital budgets.
Yeah. So because these don't already exist, the executive didn't do a lot of extra work besides getting them to you, because if these didn't pass, then these wouldn't exist. So once they have been created, then the executive will work on its role as the oversight body in making sure these get up and running and available for communities of faith to access. So there are no set parameters right now for this program, as we have one grant that is very similar to this already, but you kind of have to stretch the language a little bit to allow it to apply. So we don't have any preset parameters. Thank you for that suggestion, Catherine. I appreciate that. I'm saying maybe connect with other groups. Eric Skillings, is there a limit on how many communities of faith can be in collaborative ministry? Again, it's not a collaborative ministry agreement, but can be working collaboratively. No, there is not. What happens is, as stated, and this is not a bad thing, but it just is as part of it, is if you have 5 communities of faith working together, all 5 communities of faith need to have their names and information as coming into through the granting process. And that would then mean that all 5 would not be eligible for additional grants in the same year in different ways. So it is, so that is part of it. That's where the limit would be. But you could have as many as you wanted, but if you have 5 communities of faith applying, or you have 2, it is still $10,000 is the maximum. It's not per community of faith that's in there, it's per application. I just have a message from our treasurer, a private message, that the goal is to be trying to have these all in place for January 1st, 2025, as from an auditing standpoint, trying to create new funding situations in the 3rd quarter of the year can be challenging. So the goal would be to have these all up and running in January. So just give me one quick second here, folks. I just need to talk to for now. Yeah, I've got 2 more questions. Okay, so if a community of faith, from Doug, if a community of faith or a collaborative ministry includes community of faith from across the regional boundaries, would it still be possible to apply for these funds? Yes, it would. As the grant at the current, or the fund at the current time, does not say that the communities of faith have to be within the bounds of Antler River Watershed. It's that they need to be United Church of Canada as per how we otherwise give out money. So that is a possibility. And so, okay, so clarifying question. These 3 from Brad McMurray, these 3 proposals could add quite a bit of workload to the executive. Any thoughts on how to manage this? Yes, we have talked about that. And so that would be part of as well, the executive deciding, obviously from the bridge financing loans, you can't say, as we discussed earlier, you can't say, well, you can only apply for them in June or September, because those generally would be things that might be more emergent. But for something like a collaborative ministry, or even a moving expense, you kind of have an idea. You have a little bit more time knowing that this is going to be happening. And so the executive will work within those parameters to have an idea of how to best manage their workload. It was discussed, and because of the nature of what these proposals were, the executive, who, remember, has members of all three commissions on the executive felt that this work did fit more with the executive than any of the others. And as an example, the Discipleship and Justice Commission manages 3 or 4 of other funds. So, we didn't want to add more work to them. So we did talk about it, yes. Okay, back to you, President Cheryl.
Okay. And if not seeing any more questions currently, the motion has been moved by Richard Auckland and seconded by Kerry Stover. And now we will move into discussion. Again, remembering to use your raise hand icon.
President Michele, I see Mark on the.
Yeah, that's you started your video. Turn your video on.
Oh, sorry. I forgot to turn my video back on. Yes, so we have moved into questions for into discussion, time of formal discussion.
Fred has a question. That's a statement.
Fred, excuse me, Fred. Oh, I see.
It's in the chat.
Yeah, except it's not showing on mine. Hang on. It's in the chat. Okay. Of the 3 proposals, I see this as the most useful but underfunded. Thank you for your comment. And Catherine Collins-Barker, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, my question is this. One of the things is that it sounds like you're preparing a proposal that exists in other areas already. We here in Essex County have the Development Fund for a similar kinds of project, but we don't have the stipulation that 2 communities of faith have to do it together. Is this because of this proposal, does it go because you want to have collaborative ministry as the base?
I would say not because of the formal collaborative ministry.
No, I'm talking about getting 2 or 3 churches together to do something specific. And so the question is, I mean, you're going to give them up to $10,000, which you're not really sure what it's for.
Oh, they have to specify what.
You don't have parameters set.
It's not for a capital project. That's one of our parameters. Okay. So we want to have some freedom around that, and we'll have a better idea once people are submitting. We are certainly open to other to options. And so we purposely haven't set specific parameters because we don't want to limit either. We don't know what the wonderful ideas are that are floating around out there. We would love to find out, though, and we want to encourage those. Does that help?
Okay, no, it doesn't help. That's okay.
Sorry.
It doesn't help at all. Okay, thanks.
Celia.
Does this also have the limit of if those COFs have $100,000 of unrestricted funds? Are they limited to apply for this?
That is not a parameter for this one, this particular grant. Thank you for your question. Any other questions, discussions, comments for or against? Okay, so then let's call for the vote. Can I have the poll put up? There we go. We'll give you a minute or so. And we will call for the poll to end. And that is carried as well. Thank you very much, folks, for all your input today on these proposals. And where are we at in our schedule here? Oh, we have a video. Oh, on stewardship first. We have from Brina Baker. We have a video on stewardship. Let's watch.
Hello, friends. My name is Brenna Baker, and I'm the Community of Faith Stewardship Support Staff for our 3 Southwest Ontario regions. I want to start my time today by inviting you to think about something you've accomplished in your life that you feel really proud of. Maybe it was earning that degree or finishing a big project at work. Perhaps you're thinking of social justice issues that you've been involved with, which have helped to change hearts and minds. Or maybe you just raised a really great kid. Whatever it is, did that accomplishment take time, months, years, decades even? Did you have to struggle and learn and make mistakes? Did you have to rely on others for collaboration and support? Did your perspectives and ideas change along the way? Often when people approach our team for stewardship support, they want some quick tips or easy ideas to implement right away. But what they soon discover is that creating an ongoing culture of generosity and an abundance mindset takes a lot of time, a lot of dedication, prayer, trial and error, and teamwork. Deepening generosity, like any other aspect of discipleship, is a lifelong pursuit. But we know that those things in our lives that are the most meaningful, most transformative, are the ones that come with a cost, the ones that ask a lot of us. So you might be thinking, well, that's great and all, but we can't start our stewardship work without a minister. Or we can't start without a team, and even though I'm interested, who else would join me? Or, well, we definitely can't start in the fall when things are so busy. There's a wisdom saying that goes something like, if you want shade, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. But the next best time is right now. If you want to see your congregation deepen generosity so that you can continue to do God's ministry into the future, the best time to start is today. And here are 2 best first steps you can take. First, reach out to me. Let's just have a half-hour phone or Zoom call. I will listen lovingly to all of your concerns. But then I will tell you that you can do this. And more than that, that you need to do this. There are people right now in your little corner of the world that need to know God's love through your community of faith. It's not about preserving your building for 100 more years. That's not what we're doing. It is about being Christ's hands and feet right now and ensuring that you have the resources to do so. But don't take my word for it. If you aren't sure, let me know and I can put you in touch with a nearby community of faith that has done our program. Hear directly from them their own stories of transformation in this stewardship journey. And the second best step after you call me, the next best first step, is to sign up for Getting Started in Stewardship. This is our overview course. It goes through our approach to stewardship, and it's offered many times throughout the year on the ChurchX platform. You also get to meet with other folks from across the whole country for support and peer learning. You are not alone. Sign up for a Getting Started course, and then together we'll work on the next steps for your community of faith. Friends, committing to the hard work of stewardship and generosity is already making an impact in our regions. One way we tangibly see the impact of generosity is through the ministries that support mission support grants from our Discipleship and Justice Commissions. These mission and service funded grants mean that the mission and service offerings you make each Sunday go toward funding the vital and creative ministries of your United Church neighbors down the road. Or maybe you are a recipient of a grant. Here are some of the grant recipients from last year in Horseshoe Falls. Here are some of the grant recipients from Antler River Watershed. And here are some of the recipients from Western Ontario Waterways. In total, $425,000 was granted to these communities of faith and other church organizations to share God's love with neighbors in our regions. Thank you for your generosity. So, why not get out your metaphorical shovels to plant a stewardship tree today? Get in touch with me, sign up for Getting Started in Stewardship, and take the first step in your journey of deepening generosity. Your future selves will thank you.
Thank you, Brenna and the Stewardship Committee. I love to hear where the good work that we are doing in the church. It's always wonderful to see. Next, we are going to hear from Matthew Tyhurst, who is our youth animator in regards to the GC45 youth delegates. And again, we have a video.
Hi, my name is Matthew Tyhurst, and I'm one of 7 other Youth Forum Leadership Animators for the United Church of Canada, and I'm also the Youth Forum Leadership Animator for our super region of Horseshoe Falls Regional Council, Western Ontario Waterways, and Antler River Watershed. As part of my planning for Youth Forum, regions across Canada get the exciting opportunity to select up to 6 youth ages between 15 and 25 to attend General Council and be part of the additional programming called Youth Forum. Now, there are a couple exciting rules that I'd like to explain with you when you are selecting these 6 youth. The first one is that a minimum of half, or a minimum of 3 out of these 6 youth, have to be Indigenous or racialized. Furthermore, there are 2 types of people that automatically fill up this roster of 6 people. The first one is if there are any commissioners aged between 15 and 25, they automatically get put on this list and they are automatically considered and welcome to be a part of Youth Forum. The second type of people are the youth forum leadership animators like myself, who also get put on this up to 6 people roster for our region. So an example is for Horseshoe Falls Regional Council, which is the region that I am a part of. I would be as part of those 6 people, so that means that what is left is for us to select a minimum of 3 more Indigenous or racialized people, and then 2 others that can be white or Indigenous or racialized as well. Or another example is if a commissioner got selected from Western Ontario Waterways, for example, then that means that you have 5 people left to select. I'm really excited to be working with all of you, especially in the months leading up to General Council, and I would welcome any questions that you may have. You can reach out to me with Matthew@sophist.ca, or Kathy Douglas can forward my name to any questions that may arise. Thank you.
Wow, that was fantastic to hear from the young people, our youth delegates. And I really like the term super region. I don't know about you guys, but yeah, that just energizes me. That makes me feel good. Now we are going to hear from our last commission, the Community Support Commission. Congregational Support Commission. I knew I had it written down.
Hello, friends. My name is Greg Simpson, and I am the chair of the Congregational Support Commission of Antler River Watershed Region. The Congregational Support Commission is the body of the region that works with congregations who are in transition. And that transition could take any shape at all. It could be something new and exciting is happening. It could be that you are considering heading in a different direction. It could be that you as a church are deciding to sell your building and continue on as a congregation without a building. Or it could also be that you are choosing to disband. Any one of these things are changes, and that's where the Congregational Support Commission is there to support congregations. We do all of those things, and if you read through your workbook, you'll see that we have done some of those with all sorts of different places within the region this past year. We particularly wanted at this point to highlight collaborations. Now, you might automatically jump to thinking about collaborative ministries, and that is certainly an exciting thing that we are seeing happen around the region. But collaborations come in all sorts and shapes. And in fact, many of you are already involved in collaborations, and you don't even think of it because it's what you already do. Perhaps even you are a multi-point charge. That is a type of collaboration. Or maybe the congregation who is some distance away, they've been struggling with their building and they decide to rent your building in the afternoons. Or maybe you choose to worship together. That also is a collaboration. That particular one we call nesting. Or maybe you have gone through a process of closing a couple of buildings and gathering together in a new building. That is also something very collaborative. Perhaps it's outside of the denomination. Do you work with the Presbyterians or the Anglicans or the Reformed Church in your community? Maybe you are the location where your local food bank can provide supplies to people who desperately need them. That too is a collaboration. For a couple of years now, a collection of churches in the southern part of what used to be Kent Presbytery have gathered on a monthly basis to get to know each other a little better, to explore what it is that they might do together, to hang on to the collegiality that they remember from days of presbytery, and to continue to do beautiful, faithful things in each of their communities.
My name is Kevin Drury. I'm from Charing Cross United Church. Charing Cross and Wesley are really relatively newcomers to the conversation of the South Kent United Churches group.
With buy-in and input from each of the congregations and under the cheerleading and encouragement of Eric Skillings.
We've known the South Kent, St. Luke's and St. Andrews and Talbot Street for well over 20, 25 years. It really started back when David Stedman was our minister in Charing Cross, and Eric was the new guy. And they started doing a ladies' dinner together that the men put on at Christmas time. And the men from all Charing Cross, Wesley, St. Andrews, St. Luke's, and later on Talbot Street put on that dinner. So we got to know each other through that.
This group of churches has gathered and in fact grown from the initial 4 who got together into 8 or 9, depending on how exactly you count them.
George Darnley, and I'm from St. Luke's United Church. 13 years is when we talk about our first amalgamation with Talbot Street. We didn't have enough money to continue to be in our partnership with St. Andrews, and Talbot Street, they needed a minister, so we worked a deal.
My name is Christy Coatsworth, and I'm a member of Talbot Street United Church. Talbot Street is on the shores of Lake Erie. A lot of our identity is tied up in place. We feel very attached to the water, to the land. A lot of farm families constitute our congregation. Our affiliation with St. Luke's has been a very comfortable fit.
And collaboration has showed up in many different ways over the last couple of years. The congregations of Charing Cross and Wesley have chosen to nest together, worship together each Sunday.
Through COVID, the income supplements that we could get through the federal government to support the wages of our minister really masked what Wesley was going through from a financial position, that they no longer could afford to maintain their building. So we were in the process of figuring out what Wesley was going to do and how the partnership of Wesley Charing Cross could continue. And Wesley decided to give up their building, and they nested with Charing Cross. We've been sharing one worship space, but we've stayed 2 congregations. Getting rid of all of the costs of maintaining that second building was something that they just had to do.
New Scotland Ridge is a congregation that have amalgamated, joined forces, sold one building, and now gather in New Scotland. St. Luke's in Raleigh Township, Talbot Street, St. Andrews in South Buxton, and Darrell S. Moffat in Tilbury have chosen to share Eric Skilling's worship and pastoral care skills across all 4 of those churches, gathering for services in different places on different Sundays.
I'm Andrea Webb-Price. I'm from Darrell S. Moffat Memorial Church in Tilbury. It's working very well. People are happy with what we're seeing. I'm very impressed. And I was very negative about it at first. I actually thought we should close down. And that may happen down the road, but we also have options now. You know, it's working out. I think it's working out very well.
And now the newest thing that's under conversation is whether a collection of them might be able to work together to hire a new minister to do some collaborative ministry among many of those congregations. There's a beautiful sense of togetherness across all of these different, very diverse congregations who are finding new ways to get together, who are walking carefully through the change and the transition, the beautiful encouragement and support of all of their neighbors and friends, as well as the grief and the processing of what has changed and what is no longer the way it used to be.
Alwyn Vince. I'm chair of the Fletcher United Church. We're in the nesting procedure right now. We went through, I think, 3 different motions to have it extended. And now, as most people realize, our Fletcher United Church has been sold. As a congregation, we knew it was time, because of the numbers we had, that we couldn't keep going.
I don't want to pretend that this is all super easy, though. These are tough decisions being made by beautiful people, some of whom are watching the end of particular parts of their ministry. One particularly difficult thing to do is to close the doors and walk away from a building. We honor Essex United, who just recently celebrated 150 years of anniversary and then closed their door the next day. I love that they chose to do that in such a celebratory and yet grief-filled way. A time to celebrate and honor the legacy that had led them to this place and to this time, and then step bravely into whatever new thing is happening among them. I would love for each and every one of you to know what is possible when we come together.
I enjoy coming to the meetings and hearing where everybody, where they have been, where they're going, and what we've achieved by meeting together and getting some common ideas.
Our world, it seems, is working hard to separate us, to isolate us. Certainly 2-3 years ago forced us into isolation. It's now time for us to re-engage, to build deeper relationships with the people close to us, whether it's our neighbors or the church down the road, or maybe it's a social group that's doing beautiful work in our communities. Collaboration is one of the most important next steps for our congregations. I want to leave each and every one of you with a challenge. Look for the ways that God is at work in collaborations in your community already. Who is it that you are working with in ways that build up ministry, that bring God's kingdom into this world? And then expand your vision just a little bit and ask, who else is God leading us into working with? And as you do that work, know that you are not alone. Not only does God walk with you through all of this, but we, the region and the Congregational Support Commission, want to be here for you to do just that, to support you and your congregation. If you have questions about what a collaborative agreement might look like, we've got experience with that. If you want to know what it might look like to sell your building and go on as a congregation, we can walk with you through that. If you've just got a whole lot of questions and a lot of grief and need somewhere to park it, give me a call. Talk to the commission. We are here to support you through this. We know that God continues to do amazing things in each and every one of the communities where we reside.
Go with it, and we'll come out the end. The United Church in our area will come out the winner.
I personally say thank you to you and all of the beautiful people around you who are doing the faithful work of Christ in this world. Thank you, and may God bless you.
Thank you so much for your commission report. For all three commissions, you've done amazing work, and I really appreciate the support you have given. And it's a great way for us to connect. And Greg just spoke about some wonderful experiences on how we are connecting in our communities of faith. Kerry.
Some good news to share with people.
Yes, I do. Do you have some good news to share? There are Mr. Agenda and Business.
Do you want to mute yourself?
I will do that.
I have very good news to share with the court today, is that there's no final proposals or new business that has come to us by 9 a.m. this morning. So that means we can move on to courtesies and closing motions.
And we don't have to be that long.
And we don't have to meet after lunch, right? We can just keep going. I think that's the best news.
Kerry, you're going to have to mute yourself. Thank you. It's a disadvantage of working the same. It's great working in the same room. We all, share a lot, but we also share mics sometimes unintentionally. I want to say thank you for all the work that everybody has done here today between the commissions and our presenters. We've done great things. We've accomplished wonderful things this weekend. But wait, there's more. We have a wonderful celebration of ministry this afternoon as well. And so I want to take this opportunity to say thank you to a few folks. And please, please forgive me. I've tried to keep everybody in my prayers and thoughts and say thank you, but I'm undoubtedly going to forget somebody. So I apologize ahead of time. I want to say thank you to Reverend Doug Peck and all of his colleagues that helped him to put the worship service together, both the ones that we saw online and the one that we will see this afternoon. The folks at Lambeth United Church who have offered up their space and their talents and time to have our celebration of ministry this afternoon. Thank you so much. To our commissions, the presenters, their chairs, and all of those who sit on those commissions for all the work, those who sit on the subcommittees of those commissions. The church cannot function without you. Thank you so much for your work. To our incredible staff, several of which are sitting here in this room, I want to say thank you so much for the work that you do. As somebody as ministry personnel, I can tell you that they work tirelessly because they're not just serving our community, our region, they're serving 2 or 3 regions, and they do a fantastic job of balancing them out. And I see the workload, I see what you guys are going through. I really hope that there's something that we can do to help you, and if there is anything, please let us know. To our tech team of Michele, with 1 L, and John Neff, thank you so much for keeping us going, for getting our videos uploaded, and keeping us organized. Thank you so much. And I said this at the end, we're growing relatively seamlessly, and I'm probably just jinxed us. But anyways, so far we have been very good things. A very good day, technically speaking. To Brad, our parliamentarian, thanks, bud. I've been talking way too much to Brad lately, but not about parliamentarian stuff. But he's a great guy too, and easy to work with. Thank you so much. To our agenda and business chair, Kerry, across the table from me there, thank you so much for organizing us, keeping us on track, and keeping the agenda flowing. To Max, way over there guarding the snack table. Thank you so much, and welcome again to our group. And if we don't see them next week, it's because we were too hard on them, and I apologize. I really hope you stay with us for a while. To our chaplains, Melanie and Karleen, thank you so much for your listening ears and your patience, and I appreciate your guidance to all of us. To our equity support person, Charmaine Bailey, thank you too for agreeing to be part of ours, for reading our statements, and for acting as support for our members. To Kate Young, who will this afternoon will speak to us at our celebration of ministry, that Reverend Kate Young, who is also going to be involved in our service this afternoon. To Tanya Cameron and the Board of Candidacy for Southwestern Ontario. Thank you for your discernment and your guidance to our candidates. But most of all, I want to say thank you to you and for all you have done, for spending this weekend with us, for doing the work of the church. Thank you so much. And last but certainly not least, probably the one I have to thank the most for putting up with me is our executive minister, Mark, who has showed great leadership and ability to provide us with delicious snacks. That's just a little, you have to see our snack table to understand that. But yes, we have had a wonderful weekend here, and it's a pleasure doing the work of the church when you're surrounded by helpful and caring people. Oh yeah, I have to mute. If I don't mute, you can't do it.
I'm going to invite Richard Auckland to share, our president-elect to share. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you for the privilege of sitting on the planning team for this event. Again, incredible to have the talent that we have that we can draw from, whether it's lay people or ministry staff, etc. So ditto to all of Cheryl's thank yous. And I want to extend a special thank you to Cheryl as well for all her leadership and her ability to pull everything together as well with the support. It's a team effort. So thanks, Cheryl. And we hope everybody enjoys the remaining part of the fall. And I will turn it back over to you, Cheryl.
Thank you, President-elect. I'm just looking through the chat now, because I'm not very good at multitasking apparently today. The young man who spoke from I see a message there, the young man who spoke as our youth animator, I see that Tanya has said something about keeping this, he's registered as a licensed lay worship leader program, and he's still in high school, so that's pretty cool. I look forward to that. So yeah, I look forward to hearing from him in the future. Someday, maybe he'll be sitting right here. Thank you so much to him and to Brenna. I missed Brenna as well, so thank you. I knew I was going to miss somebody, and my apologies for that as well. Let's take this time. Do we do the closing motion first? And then the...
Your choice. You can pray or closing motion, whatever you want to do first.
Okay, prayer close. All right, I'm told prayer, then close. So somebody made a decision. Okay, let us take this moment to end in our prayer. Gracious Creator, as we have gathered our thoughts today, this weekend, we thank you and we close this meeting. We give thank you, though, for the beauty of this season, for the crisp air and the changing leaves and the rhythm of nature that reminds us of your constant presence, and we are grateful. Let us take this time in this season to reconnect not only with each other, but with nature, with creation, with you, O Lord. Thank you for the time that we have shared, for the wisdom and the passion that each person has brought to this meeting, and for their shared commitment to the land and the water and all that thrives within this region and beyond. May our work here serve as a testament to our love for your creation and a reflection of your hope for harmony and justice and peace. As we go from here, may we carry a spirit of unity and care for one another and for all living things. Guide us, inspire us, and renew our spirits so that we may be faithful stewards of the gifts that you have entrusted to us. We ask this with grateful hearts in your holy name. Amen. And now I will call for the closing motion.
Thanks, President Cheryl. It's my great pleasure to bring you the closing motion, which is on page 28 of the workbook. If you have that already, what's the issue? Well, the work of the Regional Council continues between Regional Council meetings, and although it's not stated here, our next Regional Council meeting in person is May 30th and 31st of 2025. And so there is work to be done. And so we need, why this issue is important is because the Regional Council must be clear on how the work will continue. And so through this motion, you will entrust that any unfinished business from this meeting will go over to the executive. You'll also authorize the executive to fill any vacancies on the understanding that appointments will be confirmed at the next spring meeting. And through this motion, you'll direct the executive to plan to convene the meeting of the Regional Council in the spring of 2025, as I already gave you the dates. And you're going to entrust the executive and commissions with the responsibilities and authority of the Antler River Watershed Regional Council in accordance with the United Church of Canada Manual and the Governance Handbook of the Antler River Watershed Regional Council. So this motion will also close the meeting of this October 25th and October 26th at the close of the celebration of ministry service on, that should say Saturday, October 26th. Sorry about that error. And so I move this proposal, the closing motion. And I have a seconder, Richard Auckland.
And can we have the poll put up, or do we need to?
It's a procedural motion, so you don't have to call for discussion if you don't want to.
Okay, so let's put the poll up and vote on that. Couple more seconds. And we'll close the poll. And we are carried. Thank you, folks, And we'll see you this afternoon at 4:30 for the celebration of ministry, either in person or online. Thank you so much, and God bless.